Hello there, AP Human Geography people. Let's keep learning about industry and development. Keep talking about the world, the economy, how things are changing. Let's check it out. Whoop, and now I just went way in the opposite direction. Here we go. Okay, so this was the start of the factory economies in the world. It happened roughly 170 years ago in the 1850s, and it's kind of been the way to make money in the world ever since. But the biggest change that's happened in our modern world is all manufacturing used to be based in the United States, Europe, and Japan, and today it's becoming more and more based in China, and even to a degree it's starting to branch off into other parts of developing Asia as well, like Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam. And yep, what does industry do? It pollutes our world. It's kind of rough. And you know, I think out of all the pictures I show in human geography class, this is my favorite picture. Okay, like this is really showing, and especially it's the look on this kid's face. Okay, so these are some homeless kids in Mumbai, and here are some volunteer teachers who take time after their day to teach these homeless kids basic math and basic English and basic other skills. And look at these kids' faces. They're furiously taking notes. They're desperate to learn. They're desperate to advance their knowledge. They're desperate to gain a higher level of income and success in their life. And I really wish kids in America had this attitude too. This would be amazing. Because the rest of the world knows it. The rest of the world knows the path to economic success. And the rest of the world's going to catch up with us. And so a lot of times high school kids ask me, Mr. Brown, why are there so many difficult requirements to get into college? Why do I have to have so many good grades and so many high SAT scores to get into the best colleges? And it's because kids all over the world are competing against you. So, yeah, it is a global economy. And these kids want to be a part of it. They desperately do. All right, moving on. All right, so today's big topic is going to be the ladies. What's up, ladies? Ladies. Women and their role in the global economy, because human geography has this whole thing on talking about women. So let's do that today. Okay, so women, great people to have in your business. Okay, companies greatly benefit from increasing employment and leadership opportunities for women. Women have generally better organizational effectiveness and growth for a company when they're involved with it. It's estimated that companies with 3 or more women in senior management functions all score higher on every dimension of organizational performance. The vast majority of the bosses I've had in my life have been women. Like, I don't know, I have a very, like, male-centric brain. And the thing is, I can only do one thing at a time. I am not a multitasker. I'm a single-task kind of dude. Like, I just ate my dinner, I just checked my phone, I just drank some water, and now I'm recording a lesson. You know, but, I recall female friends of mine, they can do 100 things at the same time and do them all with ease. And, you know, like, I remember growing up, like, sometimes I would tell my mother the most random side fact at the most random time while she was, like, balancing my baby sister and cooking dinner and doing all these other things. And then the next day, my mom would remember the fact that I told her, and I forgot the fact that I told her. So, yes, like, get women involved in even the highest levels of business and management, and they will balance out the role if it's just all dudes. So get all the genders involved. Better organizational structures, no doubt. Better business world, no doubt. But the current state of the world, as you can imagine, is women generally aren't in the top levels of management and not typically in leadership positions. I mean, you know, I'm an educator, so I think my field is kind of more dominated in women. But if you get in kind of like the corporation world, the really high levels of business management, usually there's a bunch of dudes in the room. And I could probably bring up some more stories as we go through these slides of female friends of mine I know who have struggled and seen some sexual discrimination over their careers in the modern business world. Okay, so women in management positions. So 74% of human resource managers are women. 71% of social community managers are women. 65% of educational administrators, in my case, like 90%. And then all the numbers start getting really low, especially in like construction, computer systems, and chief executives. And this is the one I really want to highlight. You know, a chief executive is a person who runs like these big, giant, major companies. So 3 out of 4 are men. I would like to see a world where it's 50-50. And I think most people would. So there you go. All right, so yeah, ladies in charge. Women in leadership. Let's get it. Okay, so And that's most of that's the case in the Western world. But if we look from a truly global perspective, many countries in the world, and many women in the world especially, are legally restricted from having the same life choices as men. There are many countries, especially in the Middle East, who say, are you a woman? You can't do X, Y, Z. Really kind of messed up. Women are a lot less likely to participate in the labor market than men around the world, and that typically makes sense because women are the childbearing gender of the human race. And the typical thing that occurs is when a woman gets pregnant and has a baby, the woman just kind of stays at home and takes care of that baby full time. And that was the case in almost every culture around the world for almost all of history. And women being in the labor force is kind of a relatively newer development in the international economy. So it's a change that I hope continues to happen. But certain parts of the world, either for culture, usually for cultural reasons, really like discourage women from being economically independent and being totally involved with the rest of the world. So, yeah, the labor force participation rate for women of working age is 63%, while with men it's 94%. So still more than half the women in the world today have jobs, but almost 40% of them don't because they're basically full-time taking care of the kids, most likely. But here's an interesting concept. Factory owners in the developing world actually prefer women workers to male workers. And I remember when I read this statistic, it was, or this fact, the factory workers said something like, women are more reliable than men. Like, you know, men are, I don't know, maybe more crazy and more dangerous at certain things, and women will do the work and do it well and do it efficiently. So get on it, ladies. All right. So where are women most likely to be your boss? So there are 3 countries in the world that have more female bosses than male bosses. It's Jamaica, Colombia, and St. Lucia. That's one of the Caribbean islands. So that's kind of interesting. All these countries are sort of like Caribbean kind of countries. And then, hey, the Philippines is pretty high up there. Go Philippines for your gender equality. Good job. In the USA, hey, we're number 15 out of 200, so I don't think we're really below this number. But I would imagine, you know, Arab countries at the bottom of the list, it's like 0% of women will be your boss. Yeah, so the ratio of female to male workers in the labor force, as we can see here, the entire Arab world is just not about letting ladies participate in the labor market. And it looks like the Latin American world isn't really into it either. But surprisingly, Sub-Saharan Africa, women get jobs, yo. Like, women are working. Same thing with most of, well, I don't know, India isn't about women working either. Bangladesh, maybe not so much. But most Asian countries are pretty cool with letting ladies work. All right. And the West is all about it, no doubt. Okay, so yep, women take care of the kids. That's why many women don't work. And then women in the global labor force. So in 2006, it was 1.5 billion. And 2015, it was 1.75 billion. So yeah, it's a trend going in, I would say, the correct direction. Workforce split. So yeah, the percentage of adults who work full-time, men versus women. So the British Commonwealth, it's totally equal. So all those former British colonies. But then when we get to South Asia, it's a little bit more men. Non-EU Europe, so this is like former Soviet Union, way more men than women. Latin America, way more men than women. North America, more men than women, surprisingly enough. And most of that's probably the disagreement in Mexico. The Middle East, well, there's a surprising amount of women on this chart. But yeah, so. All right, cool. But yeah, it seems like every single region of the world has more men working than women. The only place where it's equal is former British Empire. Okay. Now, yep, taking care of the kids. That's usually what happens. Okay. So, globally, if you just looked at all the salaries of all men and saw what they were and added them together, and all the salaries of all women and added them all together, there is something called the gender wage gap. And it's estimated to be 23%. So, the total amount of money that all men make is, what? 25%. Oh, how do you do the math? Women make 77% as men when you look at all wages added together. Okay? And I'm going to interpret the gender wage gap like this. It's so many women, working age women, they typically will have a child and then remove themselves from the workforce. But I don't know, that woman's husband, he would continue to work through the workforce. He would rise the ranks. He would gain promotions. He would eventually become the top level boss. So I think a typical thing here is this motherhood wage penalty, where pregnancy kind of like, and taking, you know, maternal breaks and then taking years off to work with the kids, it really screws up the career trajectory for women. And actually, I do have one friend who, his wife is very, very economically successful. They, of course, are married, and then she had a kid. And as soon as they had the kid, he became the stay-at-home dad, and she continued to work. And he was like, yeah, she makes like twice about as money as me. Why would I continue or why would I work and she stay home? So I think that could become more and more of a culturally acceptable thing, because I think still that's kind of a taboo topic to have a stay-at-home dad. But I think it is more and more of a common thing for our future. Okay, so let's check it out, and let's see what we can do to solve the wage gap. All right. So yeah, this boss lady, she's pregger. She's, you know, got to take some time off to deliver the baby, and we would hope that society can sort of better work women back into their rising through the economic ranks. And so the global average earnings of men to women in 2006, men, well, it says made double women. I'm not sure what this is. Global Gender Gap Report. Okay. Men made more than double women. And in 2015, men made not quite double, but yeah, so the things are getting, the ratio is getting better for women, but there's still a lot of work to do. Okay, and then so percent of jobs occupied by men and women. This is probably like percent of boss jobs, I would say. Actually, I don't remember what this one's for. Huh? I usually have titles on graphs that don't have charts, but. Anyway, so yeah, Japan and Korea. I would assume this has to do with like CEOs. And Japan and Korea, I remember like when I was living in Korea, the thought of having a female boss was so culturally taboo. They were like, if you are a female in Korea, you work as like a secretary, you work as like an underling worker. You like it's culturally inappropriate for you to think about starting your own business or climbing the corporate ranks. And I was like, that's sexist. What the heck? But yeah, that's what's up over there. Okay, so mapping paid maternity leave. So how many weeks do other nations provide compared to the USA? So yeah, maternity leave is a pretty important concept. It's if a working woman gets pregnant, will the government sort of economically assist that woman and give her the money and the ability to successfully deliver the baby, and maybe give her some amount of weeks, some amount of time to kind of get to know the baby, and especially like I have a lot of friends who have like brand new babies, and those first 6 months especially, like you gotta watch that baby like a hawk. Like you gotta be with that baby all the time. You've got to take turns staying up all night to care for the child. And actually that almost goes through the whole first year of life. Once a baby's like after age 1, age 2, age 3, then maybe they can be a little bit less managed and more independent. So I think it's just kind of culturally acceptable that you should expect to have 52 weeks to take care of a child in its full first year. And it looks like so many of these. All right, no, yeah, 52 weeks, yeah. 52 weeks. So Canada does give you basically a full year off to take care of your brand new baby. Most European countries give you somewhere around 2, or this is how many weeks? So 14 weeks. So this is 3 months. Yeah, 3 months is generally what's typical. The UK, this is 5 months. So that's almost half a year. But the United States, we don't have any laws guaranteeing time off for women. That's only something you would have to work out with your employer. But all these other countries have kind of national mandates over giving some help for moms to take care of their brand new babies. Okay. And anyway, so next series of slides are still all about women in the world economy. No new vocabulary will appear. That's great. But I would like you to write down some notes, because my human geo overlords at the College Board are like, make sure they know about women in the economy. So here's just some more talk. Boom. Yeah, if we were doing this live, I'd really like to have kind of a conversation with students and just talk about cultural differences, how men and women are treated around the world, do a little brainstorm. I want to share two stories that I've learned over the course of my life. And I thought these were both really shocking, that kind of taught me cultural differences. So when I was living in South Korea, I befriended a Saudi prince. And he explained to me why Saudi women wear burqas. And I was like, huh, okay, so Saudi women like totally cover their bodies with a burqa, this kind of shawl to hide themselves while they're in public. And he said the reason why Saudi women do that is because Saudi women are so beautiful that if men saw them in public, men couldn't resist the urges to like attack the women and like, you know, yeah, like they're so irresistible to men that the women chose to hide themselves from the men in society. And I thought that explanation was very interesting to me, because it's like, so you can't just tell men not to attack women, you have to hide all the women in the society. So yeah, that one was really interesting to me. And then the other one is the story about the Korean knife. So I remember when I was in a museum in South Korea, I was being walked around by this interpreter, and you know the interpreter was explaining all these artifacts from olden times in Korea, and then eventually she gets to this really beautiful, intricate knife, and the knife has a necklace kind of attached to it, and she starts explaining to me what the purpose of this knife was. And she said that, you know, this is a kind of knife that Korean rich girls would usually wear around their necks. And in the event that the Korean woman was walking home at night and some man tried to attack her, the Korean woman would take out the knife and promptly kill herself. And I like as soon as the interpreter said that, I was like, what? Like what? Like kill herself? Like kill the guy attacking you? And I did my best Korean to kind of have like a little mini debate discussion with her, because I really didn't understand that why that would happen. And the interpreter girl, she said that if she were to attack the bad man, then she would damage her own reputation as being a pure, innocent woman. So the correct thing for her to do would be to use the knife on herself, so she would maintain her purity. And as soon as I heard that explanation, I was like, wow, like American culture would not be about that ever. So that's just a huge cultural difference that I saw while I lived over there. So I was like, man, yeah, attack people who attack you. Okay, that's Mr. Brown. That's sort of what he's saying. Okay, moving on. All right, status of women around the world. Let's check out some of these statistics here. So these are some pretty rude proverbs, but once again, it shows you other cultures' attitudes towards women. So let's read what some of these messed up things are. A house full of daughters is like a cellar full of sour beer. Dutch proverb. They who are full of sin beget only daughters. Hindu proverb. Daughters pay nay debts. Scottish proverb. A stupid son is better than a crafty daughter. Chinese proverb. Oh, that one's rough. 2 daughters and a back door are 3 errant thieves. English. Wow. A virtuous son is the son of his family. Sanskrit proverb. Oh, and this brings up another story. Man, I remember when I was teaching English in South Korea, I taught mostly to elementary school kids. I had this one girl who went by the name Ariel, and she was one of my best students, always got an A, perfect, awesome kid. And she comes in one day, and I can tell she's really sad, and she's, like, kind of depressed. And, we do, like, half the lesson, then we're on break. And then I, like, come over to her, and I'm like, Ariel, like, what's going on? She goes, teacher, yesterday was my birthday. And I'm like, well, did you have a party? Did you get any presents? Like, was it a fun time? She's like, yeah, my whole family came over, and, my grandma gave me $10. And I was like, I don't know the economic status of this family. So I was like, $10? That's pretty cool. Like, you can buy something for $10. Like, you should be happy about that. And she goes,
Teacher, last month was my brother's birthday, and my grandma gave him $1,000. And I was just like, oh, like, yeah, that's real messed up. That's some savage family hatred stuff going on there. But it's not really family hatred. It's just Korean culture didn't value the granddaughter as much as the grandson. And I think that's real messed up. Gotta have gender equality. Rawr. Okay. So, maternal mortality rates per 100,000 live births. This is some of the stuff we talked about back in the population unit a little bit, but maybe I'm going to connect it here. So, it looks like Sub-Saharan Africa, Nepal, and Afghanistan, there's one woman dies during every 100 births. And it's also pretty high in the Latin American world. But it looks like the entire former Soviet Union, the Western world, a lot of the Far East, it looks like it's a pretty high chance that women will not die in childbirth. But I'll tell you, kids, if you go back in time like 300 years, like it was maybe a 1 in 10 chance a woman would die in childbirth. Like it was really scary every time she was delivering a baby, because a lot of things can go wrong during that process. So thankfully, world medicine has been getting better. But the places that still need more help are definitely Sub-Saharan Africa, Afghanistan, and Nepal. Okay. Women in agriculture. So the percent of the workforce where women do the agricultural stuff. So let's look where most agriculture is done by women. The answer, Sub-Saharan Africa, a couple places in the Middle East, and almost all of developing Asia. But the Western world, the Latino world, the former Soviet Union, Far East, it's all very much not women doing agriculture, must be more typically male. So why is it that so many women are doing agriculture in Africa, China, and India? Well, it probably just has to do with the fact that agriculture is the dominant industry, and it's maybe because the economic conditions are also so low, women will be caring for the children while working the subsistence farm as well. Okay, moving on. All right, strong bias for son preference evident. Countries with high instances of female abortions. Yeah, I remember when China started their one-child policy. Pretty shortly after that, they developed the technological ability for like a pregnant mom to get her stomach kind of checked on. They could do a little x-ray kind of thing of the baby, and they could determine the baby's gender. As soon as that happened, a lot of Chinese families started to make these decisions to be like, oh, let's check the baby's gender. Is it a girl? Okay, we don't want it. Abortion, get rid of the baby. And that's really messed up. It's not cool, okay? Not cool at all. But and I hope you all remember this from the population unit, but there is a severe higher number of boys in this part of the world than there are girls. And it's largely assumed that there's some of these kind of backroom abortions going on, and abilities of them sort of predetermining what gender their child will have. And that's so, I don't want to live in that world. I want a world where it doesn't matter what gender you are. Everyone should be treated equally. Everyone should have the same chances. But sadly, that's not the case, and especially in this part of our planet. All right, sex ratio at birth in Taiwan and South Korea and China. Okay, so it looks like in all these countries, there always have been more boys than girls. And maybe that's not too abnormal for there to just always be a couple more boys. But over time, all three of these countries, the bars have been rising. And now in China, there are 116 boys for every 100 girls. So what that ultimately means is eventually 16 Chinese boys will never find wives in China. Too many dudes. It's going to eventually be a terrible gender problem. And also with too many dudes, it's going to continually push women out of economic advancement. Women are going to become a larger and larger minority if this trend continues. Okay, mortality rate for girls higher than average. So all the countries that have any kind of color here, if you're a girl, it's a greater chance that you ain't gonna make it. And it's these countries that I already highlighted earlier, and then a couple ones in Africa, surprisingly Mexico, Peru. So Yeah, sorry. And yeah, especially under the age of 1. So we know that probably some of these families, they have a baby girl and they're like, we don't want it anymore. And that's so sad. Okay, seclusion of women practiced among some groups. So these are a lot of the Middle Eastern part of the world. And my buddy Hakum, who of course grew up in the city of Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, he told me that like his mom basically never left their family compound in like 30 years. And I was just amazed by that. I'm like, doesn't she like want to see things? Doesn't she gotta get cooped up in there? And he's like, well, there's multiple buildings and like, you know, we've got this like garden. And I'm like, but still, like, I want to get outside. I want to like walk around, see stuff. He's like, we don't really do that in Saudi Arabia. Like the women just kind of kick it there in the compound and they don't really go out and do anything else. So if that's the culture of that country, not a lot of ways for women to get economic advancement, not a lot of ways, or not a lot of reason for them to really get educations. And also, while I was living in South Korea, Hakum, he brought 2 of his wives along with him, and his wives stayed in his apartment the whole time while he went to college and he hung out with me and he hung out with other foreigners. And one time I was like, hey man, can I meet your wives? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, like, sorry I asked. Yeah, and one time I did remember I went over to his house, and his house was 2 stories, which is kind of rare in South Korea. And we were hanging out in the first floor, eating dinner together, talking, hanging out. And I constantly heard his wives like yelling for him in Arabic, and he would run up the stairs and he would yell back at them. And I was like, you can tell them they can come down. He's like, oh no, that is not appropriate. So yeah, like they were still enforcing these gender seclusion stuff even all the way on the other side of the world in Korea. So yeah, different cultural attitudes towards women, no doubt. Okay, female genital mutilation. Oh my goodness, this is a rough topic. But yeah, there's some, especially here in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in Somalia, 90%. Oh my god. Yeah, it makes it way more challenging for women to be involved in certain activities, especially relating to childbirth. So why would they do this? It's some pretty terrible things to girls. So no thank you. Moving on. Women and family planning. So let's see. Women practicing some method of contraception. So what do we got here? We got some contraception under 10%. So very few women use any kind of sexual protection in all these countries in sub-Saharan Africa. Wow. So, but 75% and 50% in most of the Western world, and surprisingly high numbers in the Latino world as well. Okay, moving on. And the legal status of abortion. So legal on request. So abortion is pretty much legal in many of these Western countries, and especially in the former Soviet Union. Former Soviet Union is probably the winner for legal abortion. But fully illegal is some parts of Latin America, some parts of sub-Saharan Africa, surprisingly Nepal and the Philippines. I think the Philippines recently overturned that, if I remember correctly. I know that Ireland also recently overturned that. So more and more women will have the ability to control their sexual reproduction around the world. Okay, percentage of children enrolled in primary school. So in the entirety of the world, there are more boys in school than girls. And if you want to look at the easiest statistic to see, what is it? The easiest statistic to see the economic success of someone in their life, just look at how many boys are there, who has, not just to look at boys, but to look at who has the most education. Education is what'll the highest chance of determining your economic success in life. And everywhere around the world, more boys are getting educated than girls. I know that here in the United States, if you look at colleges, I want to say that there are more women enrolled in college now than men. Yeah, so I just think the numbers in Mexico and parts of Central America are probably balancing us out in the other way. Yeah, for where are we? Latin America? Oh yeah, I guess they don't really list us on here. But and this is just percentage of children enrolled in primary school. So it means that even in elementary school, there's some girls that are just never going to school. Okay, women in politics. So Women in Congress, in 1992 it was 6%, in 2002 it was 13%. I'm pretty sure this number continually goes higher and higher. So even here in the United States, almost all of our political offices are 75% or more filled by men. But I think, I remember reading the state of Nevada is the only state that has a majority female legislature. So high five to Nevada for being the most female represented state in our state government. Okay, gender empowerment measurements. So if it's blue, it's sort of saying like for all legal purposes, you are the same as a dude. And surprisingly, China is blue. I wouldn't have expected that. I thought China was like not cool with girls. But yeah, so especially America and Canada and parts of Europe, it's I think these are all in the Western world. So the Western world is where girls have the same chances, same opportunities as guys, but there's going to be a lot of cultural taboos against women being in charge and women-run businesses and many other parts of our planet. Okay, so the Gender Equality Index. This is probably the top leading way to just measure that whole thing. And yeah, once again, China's doing pretty well according to this index, but it looks like the big winners on this one are a lot of Western European countries. But it looks like the worst gender equality is still lots of developing Asia. Why is Saudi Arabia green? I don't know. I would totally disagree with this. But sub-Saharan Africa, big swaths of Latin America, not as much gender equality. Okay, and then the most common jobs in Switzerland when you compare women to men. So electricians, 98% are men. Technicians, 90% are men. IT specialists, 89%. Engineers, 88%. Computer jobs, 83%. So yeah, I see a common theme here. Sort of like if you're a technology math job, 80% or more, you're a dude. Okay, and then when we get to the middle here, it's banking, doctors, merchants, salespeople, administrative staff. Okay, so all the ones in the middle, like I think that's cool that doctors is roughly the same between men and women in Switzerland. That's awesome. Okay, but then what jobs are almost all female? 92% of domestic staff are women, so that's like, maids, housekeepers. Medical and nursing assistants, 90%. Nurses, 86%. Social workers, care workers, primary school teachers, 70-80%. So, I mean, which group of jobs do you think makes more money? The electricians, IT specialists, computer people, engineers, or the nurses and school teachers? And I think these statistics would probably be pretty similar to the United States as well. Maybe the United States wouldn't have as many female doctors as Switzerland does. But I don't know. I just think it's interesting that they actually did all the math here and saw the gender differentials in so many jobs. Okay. All right. That's it for this lesson. Peace out.